Hello! Today we are going to make ground lamb meatballs with an egg lemon sauce. It's going to be a soup and it is delicious. If you've never had lamb before, this is a great entry to having lamb. You can find ground lamb at the grocery store. My grocery store has free range ground lamb in 1 pound packets. We're going to be using 2 pounds. I'm doubling the recipe today, so everything I'm showing you, you can do half if you'd like. This recipe scales very easily. So I've got 2 pounds of lamb. I've got a nice size onion that we're going to grate. I've got a half pound of butter. I've got some tomato dust. So I've taken tomatoes, I've dehydrated them, and then I ground them up. So I'm going to use that instead of using tomato juice. You can use 2 cups of tomato juice instead of the tomato powder that I've got here, of which I've got about a full tablespoon. I've got a 1/3 cup of flour. I've got a whole cup of basmati rice. I've got 2 lemons, a bunch of parsley, pepper and salt, and well, we've got 7 eggs that we're going to use. Some of the eggs are going into the meatball and the rest are going into the soup/sauce. And we're going to use 8 cups of either water or chicken broth, whatever you happen to have on hand. So let's get started. Okay, so first things first, we're just going to get our pot ready with our liquids. We're going to start with the butter. The butter just goes in here. Okay, and then we're going to add 8 cups of water or stock, depending on what you have. I'm using water. And then we're going to take 2 teaspoons of salt. If you do a little bit more, that's fine. If you do a little bit less, that's fine. It's really what flavor you want. But you definitely need some salt. And then we're going to add pepper. We're going to add about 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. If you like it spicier, add more pepper. All right, so we're going to get that in there. Freshly ground is going to give you a more potent flavor. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the rest of the water because I initially only put in 4 cups and we need 8 cups. And if you're using tomato juice, remember you can put a cup of tomato juice in here if you'd like. I am not. I'm going to use the tomato powder that I have made. So I'm going to put that in here. Let's get all of that off. And once we get our meatballs set up, I'm going to go ahead and turn this on and get it boiling. But for right now, I just wanted to get those ingredients put together. Now we're going to work on getting our meatballs together. Okay, so we're going to get our meatballs ready. We've put 2 pounds of ground lamb in our bowl. As I mentioned earlier, you can do half the recipe if you'd like. I am going to add 2 eggs. So we're going to crack those eggs. Add them in. All right. We're going to put half of the rice in our mix. All right, so we're going to put half a cup of rice into our meat and eggs. The other half we're going to save for later. We're going to put 2 teaspoons of salt. You have to season everything. So again, you can use a little less salt if you'd like, but basically it's a teaspoon per pound, and also with the rice. So we've got our salt, and we can add our pepper. We do about 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. And then the only other thing we have to add are our onions. And in order for the onions to go in, you either need to grate them, which I find to be time consuming and sometimes dangerous to my fingers. So I chop up my onion and I use my little mini processor here to grind them up. And what you want to get is almost a paste-like version. They can be a little chunky, as you can see. I'm going to add the other half of the onion. Okay, let's get the rest of this here. And I'm going to grind that up and then add it in. Switch it over to chop. Switch directions again. And I think we're good. Yep, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So for safety reasons, I'm going to unplug the appliance, and then we will take this off and add our onions. Add the onions in. And then all we have to do now is mix this up and we can start forming our meatballs. You want to be careful not to over mix because there is fat in here, and you know the fat is flavor. So we're going to use one hand, keeping the other hand clean, and we're going to just start to mix all of this together slowly. And once we have a homogenized, everything's mixed well together. So I'm breaking up the meat first. We will go ahead and start forming these into meatballs. So it is a little cold, but you saw it took me less than 10 seconds to get the onions ready for this. It also saved me from having a lot of tears. So keep mixing until everything is incorporated together. Okay, so we've got all of our meatballs made, and now we've got our 8 cups of water, our salt, pepper, and butter, all coming up to temperature. So we're getting that nearly ready to boil. So we're going to start adding in our meatballs. You'll notice I've dusted the meatballs with a little bit of flour. Originally I told you that you have 1/3 of a cup on hand. I didn't use all of that because, like I said, it's just a light dusting. So we're going to go ahead and take the top off here because this is going to come to a boil as we're adding things in. So I'm going to go ahead and start adding the meatballs. You'll notice I didn't make them perfect in shape. That's because they're going to boil. They're going to be just fine. They don't have to be perfectly round. So I'm going to go ahead and add them in one at a time, and we're going to then add in our rice. So I want this to be at a boil when I'm adding the rice in. So in the meantime, I'm going to just add in the meatballs, and I've got a lot of them to add in here. So we're going to get all of these in while this is getting ready. All right, now that we've come to a boil, we're going to go ahead and add in our rice. That's the remaining rice that we had. We're going to turn it down to a simmer, okay? And we're going to cover this up for 30 to 35 minutes, just to make sure everything cooks through. So while we're waiting for the meatballs, you're going to get the sauce started. So you're going to take your eggs and break them into a measuring cup, one that will work with your hand mixer. See, I've got my hand mixer right here. And get all your eggs in here. It's good if the eggs are at room temperature. That way, when the time comes that we add our the liquid from the sauce, we're going to, excuse me, when we add the liquid from the broth that we're making with the lamb meatballs, everything is, you don't have anything too cold because that can break the emulsion that we're going to make. So room temperature for your eggs. So I had them out at the beginning. They've not gone back into the fridge. And I like this to be kind of eggy, so I've got a lot of eggs here. You can cut back probably by 1 or 2 eggs if you'd like. Just get that out of our way. And then we're going to take about 4 tablespoons of water and add that in. And we're going to mix this up, and then just to the point where everything's combined. So we're going to take our immersion blender, put it all the way down, and just combine everything. So we have a good, all the eggs are beaten. All those yolks are combined with the whites and the water. Okay, and that's it. At this point, we're going to wait for the meatballs to be ready. We're going to add the lemon at the end. So we're going to take about a cup of the hot broth that we've created with the meatballs, and by teaspoons, we're going to temper it and add it in to our eggs so we don't curdle our eggs. And once we have that full cup in here, we're going to dump it into and combine it with the rest of the broth. All right, so our soup is done cooking, and now we're going to finish up making the egg lemon sauce component. So we already have our eggs combined with the water, and now we're going to take literally a teaspoon at a time while the motor's running and add it in till it's combined, and until we get this whole cup added in. You want to go very slowly so that the eggs don't cook, and step by step with each addition, this is going to get warmer and warmer. Now that we've got all the soup incorporated, we're going to put the juice of 1 lemon. And now we're going to incorporate this into the broth. This is a crucial step. So you're going to have to constantly stir as you add it in. So I'm going to move myself over, add the sauce back into the broth, and then we're going to adjust our seasonings and we'll be ready to taste it. All right, so this next step is a technique you need to make sure that you follow. So we've got everything ready to go. You can see this is really hot, and we're going to add the sauce that we made to the hot broth. But we want to make sure that it doesn't break. So you have to stir it in slowly, and you cannot stop stirring. You have to keep stirring until everything's in, and you see I'm putting it in slowly. And we're going to stir for a good solid 1 to 2 minutes after I've added it all in. So while this counts, it's not all of it. And this is tempering. So we're getting, something that's not as hot added to something that's really hot. And we want to make sure that they both come up to the right temperature together. So we're going to keep stirring and keep stirring. And the slow addition allows me to make sure that those eggs, which I've already tempered with, the cup of hot broth, they won't break. So I'm going to keep stirring this for about a minute, like I said, 2 minutes, and then we'll be ready to go ahead and plate it up. All right, our soup is ready. I'm going to go ahead and ladle that out. And you can put as many meatballs as you'd like on each portion. I try and go for about 6, maybe a little bit more, depending. Add one more to that. Put a little bit more broth. And finish it with some chopped parsley. So at this point, once you've had a chance to taste it, you might want to squeeze a little bit more lemon into it. Hopefully you've already tasted it and you can tell whether or not you want to add a little bit more salt and pepper. But I would ask that you try this because that's delicious.